Did you know that Michael B. Jordan was so determined to make Creed 3 his own vision that he completely wrote Sylvester Stallone's Rocky out of the film? Or that when Stallone was asked about his absence, he claimed the franchise was taken in a direction that is quite different than I would have taken it. Apologies to Sly fans for that imitation. The spin-off series that brilliantly revitalized the Rocky saga now seems to be experiencing an identity crisis just 3 films in. A franchise that can't decide if it wants to honor its roots or completely reinvent itself. What's particularly jarring is how quickly this promising series shifted from its powerful origins. When Creed first landed in 2015, it was hailed as the perfect model for a legacy sequel, respecting the past while forging a fresh path forward. Critics and audiences alike celebrated how director Ryan Coogler had managed to capture the underdog spirit of the original Rocky films while exploring themes of legacy, identity, and black masculinity. The film earned Stallone his first Oscar nomination since the original Rocky nearly 40 years earlier and grossed $173 million worldwide on a modest budget of only $35 million. So before we break down exactly where this once promising franchise lost its way and how it descended from critically acclaimed revival to directionless sequel factory, a real quick ask that if you're new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, please take a second to hit that subscribe button now. It's one small click for you, but a huge deal for us. Now let's ring the bell on what happened with one of cinema's greatest disappointments. Reason number 1, declining creative vision. Perhaps the most significant factor in the Creed franchise's struggles has been the inconsistent creative direction across its 3 films. The first Creed, helmed by rising star Ryan Coogler, was a genuine passion project. Coogler hadn't even released his debut film, Fruitvale Station, yet approached Stallone about creating a spin-off focused on the son of Apollo Creed. His personal connection to the Rocky films, which he'd watched with his father during childhood, informed his respectful yet fresh approach to the material. The result was a film that masterfully balanced nostalgia with innovation, earning a stellar 95% on Rotten Tomatoes and reinvigorating a franchise that had seemingly concluded with 2006's Rocky Balboa. However, by the time Creed 2 arrived in 2018, Coogler had moved on to direct Black Panther, leaving Stephen Caple Jr. to take over directorial duties. While Caple Jr. delivered a solid film that satisfied most fans and critics, the screenplay, co-written by Stallone himself, leaned much more heavily into Rocky nostalgia by bringing back Ivan Drago and his son as antagonists. The film's reliance on emotional beats from Rocky IV undercut Adonis Creed's journey to establish his own legacy separate from both his father and Rocky. Reason number 2, identity crisis and thematic confusion. The first film navigated this delicate balance masterfully. Adonis was clearly the protagonist, but his journey was meaningfully intertwined with Rocky's own late-life struggles. Their relationship formed the emotional core of the film, an aging, isolated champion finding purpose in mentoring the son of his greatest rival and friend. This allowed the film to honor the Rocky legacy while establishing Adonis as a compelling character in his own right. Creed 2 maintained this dynamic but began showing cracks in the foundations. By centering the narrative around a rematch with the Dragos, the film prioritized Rocky's legacy over Adonis's personal journey. As film critic Matt Zoller Seitz observed, Creed 2 is a good movie that suffers from the anxiety of influence, specifically the influence of 5 previous movies. By Creed 3, the pendulum had swung entirely in the opposite direction. With Rocky completely absent, the film attempted to establish a standalone identity for the series. This bold move might have worked had the replacement storyline, focusing on Adonis' childhood friend Dame, Jonathan Majors, seeking revenge, been more compelling. Instead, though, it feels like a generic sports movie antagonist dropped into what had previously been a much more nuanced character study. Reason number 3, thin storylines and flat characters. One of the most glaring issues with the Creed franchise as it progressed was the increasingly thin storylines and lack of meaningful character development. The original Rocky films, particularly the first 2 installments, excelled at character-driven storytelling. Rocky was not just some boxer, he was a fully realized human being with dreams, flaws, and relationships that felt authentic. The first Creed movie maintained this tradition. Adonis wasn't just fighting to be a champion, he was fighting to come to terms with his identity, to prove his worth to himself, and to find his place in a world that saw him only as the son of Apollo Creed. Bianca, Tessa Thompson, was similarly well-crafted, a musician with progressive hearing loss who had her own ambitions and struggles. Their relationship felt genuine, with moments of tension, tenderness, and growth that elevated the film beyond a simple boxing sports movie. Yet as the trilogy progressed, this delicate balance began to tip. In Creed II, Bianca's own career aspirations and health challenges took a back seat to her role as Adonis's supportive partner. By Creed III, she'd been reduced to little more than a concerned wife, her own musical career mentioned but rarely shown. Similarly, the mentor relationship between Rocky and Adonis, which provided so much emotional depth in the first two films, was completely abandoned in the third installment. Reason number 4. From underdog to franchise formula. Perhaps the greatest irony of the Creed franchise's decline is how it mirrors the very trajectory that the Rocky series took decades earlier. The original Rocky was a scrappy, low-budget film about an underdog boxer getting a shot at the big time. Its authenticity and heart earned it the Academy Award for Best Picture. But as sequels followed, the Rocky franchise gradually lost touch with its gritty roots, becoming increasingly formulaic and outlandish, culminating in the cartoonish Cold War propaganda of Rocky IV. In a similar pattern, Creed began as a thoughtful, character-driven drama that had just happened to feature boxing. By the third film, it had morphed into a more conventional sports movie, complete with training montages that felt obligatory rather than earned, and a villain with a personal vendetta against the hero. Reason number 5. Rocky's character arc diminished. A significant casualty of the franchise's evolution has been the treatment of Rocky Balboa's character arc, which went from being thoughtfully integrated to completely abandoned. In the first Creed, Rocky's storyline was handled with remarkable sensitivity. Here was the once great champion, now alone after the deaths of his wife, brother-in-law, and best friend, given a new purpose through mentoring Adonis. His battle with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma provided emotional stakes that paralleled Adonis's fight to establish his legacy. "I fight, you fight" became their mantra, embodying the spiritual connection between these two men from different generations and backgrounds. Creed II continued Rocky's story, though with less nuance. His estrangement from his son Robert and grandson was explored, but primarily as a plot device to create tension with Adonis, rather than as a meaningful examination of Rocky's life choices. Still, Stallone's performance remained a highlight, providing the emotional gravitas that anchored the film. The complete absence of Rocky in Creed III left a noticeable void. While the film attempts to explain his absence with a throwaway line about him being out of the country, it feels like a disservice to the character and his relationship with Adonis. After investing so heavily in their bond across the two films, audiences were denied any resolution to Rocky's story within the Creed universe. Reason number 6. Over-reliance on the villain trope. As the Creed franchise progressed, it increasingly fell back onto simplistic villain-of-the-movie formulas that plagued the later Rocky sequels too. The original Rocky stood apart from most sports films because Apollo Creed wasn't a villain, he was a champion defending his title. There was no manufactured hatred or personal vendetta, just two athletes competing at the highest level. This nuanced approach gave the film a realism that set it apart from the more formulaic sports movies. The first Creed movie maintained this approach. Ricky Conlan was arrogant and dismissive of Adonis, but he wasn't evil. He was just an established champion facing a hungry newcomer. The real conflicts in the film were internal, Adonis struggling with his identity and Rocky confronting his mortality. But Creed II veered more into traditional territory by bringing back Ivan Drago, who killed Apollo in the ring in Rocky IV. While the film made admirable attempts to humanize both Ivan and his son Victor, showing how they'd been ostracized in Russia after Ivan's defeat to Rocky, the storyline still relied heavily on the revenge narrative. As critic Matt Singer noted, it's almost as if the movie is scared to fully commit to its most interesting ideas about fathers and sons. Creed III doubled down on this approach, with Dame Anderson, whose entire character was defined by his resentment toward Adonis. Despite Jonathan Majors' charismatic performance, Dame was essentially a plot device rather than a fully realized character. His transformation from Adonis's childhood friend to his most bitter enemy felt rushed and unconvincing. Reason number 7. Deviation from core themes. Perhaps the most fundamental issue with the Creed franchise's evolution has been its gradual departure from the core themes that made Rocky so endearing. The Rocky films, at their best, were never really about boxing. They were about resilience, self-belief, and finding dignity in the struggle. Rocky Balboa wasn't fighting opponents in the ring, he was fighting his own limitations and society's expectations. His journey resonated because it spoke to universal human experiences of striving against the odds. The first Creed film brilliantly updated these themes for a new generation. Adonis' struggle wasn't just about becoming a champion, it was about coming to terms with his complicated legacy, finding his own identity, and proving his worth, not to others, but to himself. The film explored profound questions about what we inherit from our parents, how we define ourselves in relation to our past, and what it means to build a legacy of our own. But hey, that's just our opinion. What do you think? Were we too harsh on the later Creed films? Do they actually hold up, or are all films in the Rocky universe doomed to this kind of trajectory? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into cinema's greatest franchises and missteps. This video was made by movie fans, for movie fans.